Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Accelerating Timelines. This is our podcast where we're exploring the mysteries of the universe, the evolution of consciousness, and the spiritual missions that help us step into the new earth. So, I'm Astara, and I work with the Angelic Council of Light and work with channeling and helping spiritual empaths come into their own protection and sense of being who they really are. And I'm here with Bethan Carr. Hi, Bethan.
Hi, and hi, everybody. My name is Bethan, and I'm an energy healer and spiritual mentor. And I work with people who are on their spiritual awakening journey to support them and help them to step into their highest timeline, their best reality, their potential. And I predominantly work with nature energies, the spirit of nature, elementals.
Well, that's so beautiful. And we're going to be talking today about this powerful topic called the New Earth. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what it is and how it comes into being and how each of us are playing a part in this amazing spiritual development that we're going through here on Earth.
Yeah, this is a really exciting time, although at times it can just feel chaotic. We're going through huge purges and emotional shifts. So we know that lots of people are finding it quite intense, even though a lot of us understand there's a bigger picture to everything that's going on.
Yeah, you're so right about intense, Bethan, because we've had the lunar eclipse, haven't we, on the full moon, and then we've had the equinox, the vernal equinox, and then we've had wonderful Venus star point happening, and then Venus conjunct the sun, and we're about to have another solar eclipse. So this is really going to take us into a really new pathway of what's about to happen. So most people I'm talking to are having a real intensity of experience at the moment, Beth. Is that what you're experiencing too?
Yeah, I mean, people that I'm working with, also myself, people that I'm observing and interacting with day to day. Um, I think for many people, if you're particularly sensitive, then you're probably observing, you've got quite a lot of self-awareness and you're probably really understanding how different these emotions are that are coming in all the time. Hour to hour, you can really be feeling quite differently. You can be feeling very centered and balanced, and then something seemingly small triggers quite a big emotional reaction, and then you can feel quite tired, a bit like we were talking about on our podcast, the last episode. These sort of fluctuations can actually be for the highest of good. These are purging energies. We're really shifting old patterns and old beliefs. And sometimes, we're feeling that very strongly. We're having to feel the emotions and feel the patterns as they're not just coming out of ourselves, but sometimes, we're clearing collective patterns.
Yeah, that's so true. I think also it's really good to point out that when we're having new energies coming in, they're actually also pushing the old energies out. Um, in a way, they're kind of allowing us to purge out of just what you described, this whole mismatch of astral energy, ancestral energy, blocked, stuck emotions, trauma. There's a huge amount being allowed to leave our energetic systems because there is a change in frequency.
Yeah, there's huge cosmic energies hitting the earth, and we know anybody that's following particular social media that are reporting on the Schumann resonance, for example. We're seeing completely different readings of the earth energy than we ever have. And then other people, other commentators who have been recording kind of ley line energy. I think it was Rory Duff was talking about hugely different ley line energies that have now been recorded that seem to have come in like the last few years and are completely different to anything that's been observed or recorded before.
Yeah, I mean, if people needed any kind of proof, if there is such a thing of that there's this huge change going on, I think that would be sufficient for for even the biggest skeptics to really begin to think, wow, there is some massive transformation going on a global level.
Yeah, and this is, as we know, a shift that's been predicted in across all cultures in the myths and legends and belief systems across the whole of the world. This time of great change, this time of awakening, this time of moving into higher frequencies, higher consciousness. And we're kind of in the pressure point at the moment where the old, like you said, the old is being pushed out because of this new influx of energy that the earth is receiving.
Yeah, and it's a bit like we've been being prepared for this in the last maybe even since 2012 actually that seems to be a lot of preparation that's been going on. I don't know if you remember people talking about ascension symptoms. That
Yeah,
seemed to be, do you remember in like from 2012 to like maybe 2019, like everybody was talking about ascension symptoms. And that seems to have then shifted. So it's almost like we were all purging out of our system. And now I get the feeling we're kind of refining this balance within us a bit more and getting to down into the deep kind of core issues now.
yeah. And I think because we've kind of had this training almost for some time, and our awareness has been increasing, I think a lot of people are stepping into roles of creation rather than kind of passively letting things happen to them and thinking, okay, there's changes going on. We're actually all being very active now. I know there's people across the planet who are helping with the energy clearing, receiving of light. You and I do a lot of work on collective global kind of patterns and issues. And I think there's people all over the world doing that, and probably have been. There's probably been people doing that for a long time, quietly behind the scenes. Um,
Yeah, I agree. And also I'm noticing there is more collective, like there's more people coming together like we do, but like more group formation, unity, kind of teams doing it as well, which is
yeah,
really lovely to see because there were so many soul, lone wolves doing their healing work.
yes, definitely. I'd be interested to discuss what we how we would explain New Earth, what we think we're stepping into, because I think maybe lots of people have slightly different perceptions, and it might be interesting for us to discuss what ours are.
But it depends which way we kind of look at this, because on a dimensional level, sometimes when I'm talking to the angelic council, they show me that we're going to be there's almost going to be two Earths, or maybe even more than one version, more than one. It doesn't necessarily have to be two, it could be more, where we are going to be essentially some of us are going to be in a higher frequency, which the Earth is ascending into, and some of us may stay in the same frequency that we see around us now. And we're going to be essentially kind of in the same space, but not in the same dimension, which is a quite a weird way of thinking about it.
Mm,
And we have a bit of that now when if people work a lot with the fairies or like other beings, there is actually a kind of veil that you can go through and an interdimensional veil where you're in a slightly different dimension, but you're in the same space. So if you, I don't know, go into the forest or and you have an experience, you can often feel like you're in a non-earthly, like you've moved from the 3D into a different, more dreamlike reality to seek and see these beings. And so I kind of see the new Earth a bit like this, that we're probably all going to be in the same space, kind of co-creating a space, but many of us will be creating something in a much higher vibration collectively than other people who will continue on the timeline that is now we see very much in the mainstream Earth experience.
that really resonates. I think that's how I sort of perceive this shift that's going on. And I can remember watching a film, and I can't look it up right now, but there's a sci-fi film where it gives a real clear scene of there being two dimensions in the same space and people shifting. It's I'll try and remember the name before the end of the podcast, because the visual effects and kind of the concept is really interesting. Um, yeah, and I think many of us are shifting between these two dimensions a lot, and I really sense that when we move into that more higher dimensional space, I find that it's time that shifts a lot for me. It's almost like there's a timelessness.
Yeah.
And you really experience that, when you're meditating, when you're focusing on something, when you're doing something that you love, you kind of shift into that slightly different space. Uh,
Yeah. And I think you're right, like almost like moving beyond the 4D, which is time, into that 5D space, which is a more timeless space where you're kind of in in more than one dimension at once. You're not fixed in the earth matter, which is the 3D. And I think you're right. You can access that through kind of higher emotions or feelings like joy, peace, comfort, like your brainwave states change,
yeah.
where you can spend more time in that space.
Yeah. And I think sort of moving into your higher heart, which are those emotions, those frequencies, but that higher heart where it's joy and kind of beauty, it's qualitative, it's appreciating um, how things feel and how they look and how they are, rather than kind of the material world of comparing. So you can kind of shift in a really simple way by moving into those emotions and moving into that higher heart. It's a completely different way of looking at and perceiving the world rather than with our heads, and that kind of quantitative mind.
Yeah, that's so beautiful because I feel that this heart activation is all part of this new Earth experience. And the way you're describing it is, for me, really resonates with what that's going to look like and feel like on a personal level. And it's going to be really interesting to see when we come together as collectives, as little groups and connections with this, like what then emerges from it to create something on a kind of macro level.
Yeah, there feels like there's so much unknown, and I think it's almost our heads can't quite expand into the full picture of what this could look like, of what we could be stepping into right now. And maybe it is in collective action that together we can kind of create something bigger, something with greater consciousness and greater awareness. It feels like it's almost too big to think about in our own mind by ourselves individually.
Yeah. And also like when we're creating something, we don't always know what it's going to look like when when we've made it. We could have an idea, but it's quite beautiful the fact that things could come out of this experience where people are using their creative powers more and they're able to kind of manifest some tangible things in our experiences, like maybe new tech or ways of providing health and curing disease, and maybe even social groups, like how we come together and live socially or lifestyle. And what that's going to look like, I think is pretty exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Just while we're talking about, the changes that we kind of see and how we might perceive New Earth, I also wanted to just touch on how it will be different as a human as we kind of anchor more into these higher frequencies and these higher energies that come into Earth, and how different we might feel than when we've kind of been operating the old paradigm. And I think, the word that comes to me is freedom. Is we're going to be really stepping out of a lot of the programming, the conditioning, the influences and interferences that we've had. That we mentioned some of those on our last podcast, but a lot of this is going to drop away as we step into these higher frequencies because they just won't be able to impact us there or to impact the earth.
And do you know, I think that's so interesting because what it makes me think of is that when I've always felt like part of this journey that we're on is to try and bring forward our individualism, our creative ability, our sovereignty of ourselves in a world that really tries to make us all the same. And I noticed that in my experience, I would have quite high anxiety if I have to fit to a certain timetable, a certain scheduling, and you experience that as a child in school as well, where you're kind of made to fit in a certain way or made to wear a school uniform. Like there is a kind of mainstream kind of push to make everyone the same, doing the same things, abiding by the same structures. And it isn't always healthy. Well, it isn't healthy for like the individualism of the soul and our creative powers. And I think our inner nature is, although we love rhythm, and that fits very well with being human, it fits very well with our kind of animal nature to have rhythms and cycles. Actually, there are certain structures that are placed upon us which can feel very suffocating and actually to the detriment of the human soul and the mental health and also the emotional health. And I kind of really hope that the this birthing of the new earth actually, rather than the individual fitting a structure that doesn't fit it, that we are actually begin to create the structure from ourselves where we can thrive within it.
Mm, yeah, beautiful. I think that's the only way that we can move forward in the higher frequencies. And yeah, you put that really succinctly, that what we've been operating in has been kind of so many almost like structures and rigid kind of frameworks that we've had to be operating in as humans that have really dulled in some ways the fullness of our creative power and our manifesting power, and what we can imagine and what we can create.
Yeah, well, when I even think about the amount of anxiety like adults go through before they go to work on a Monday, like the classic is Sunday night, and like the kids are anxious about going to school, the parents are anxious about going to work, and then it becomes almost like nobody's really, really present and enjoying
Mm.
their human experience. And when I'm working in readings with people, with the angels, they're always trying to get us to really enjoy the human experience. And it's really in contrast to what the human experience kind of doles out to us in some ways. And a lot of people feel like they can't choose, or they're trapped, or they're not, they can't step out of it. And this is one of the things with our creative abilities, we're going to have to find new ways of living and new ways of structuring that actually works for us.
I think it's going to be more about support rather than hostility. And I know that sounds like a strong word, but I feel like so much of the world can feel hostile.
Yeah.
Just even interacting with like government departments or tax or any of these things, or some workplaces. It's why many of us really don't want to do the 9 to 5, because there's like an underlying energy of hostility towards just humanness and creativity and joy and just having some sovereignty. And you're constantly hitting against it. You're hitting against um, always feeling like you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, or that you're not quite right, or you're not quite enough. And
Mhm.
I think we're going to be stepping into um, a space where we're met with support, and it soothes our nervous system rather than us constantly being on high alert. And like you said, like that background anxiety that so many of us have a lot of the time, because there's just so much that's not natural around us, that's conditioned or programmed, or just aiming to bring our energy down. That's what some of these structures are for, so that we don't resonate and we don't shift the earth. And that, I mean, that maybe is like a whole other podcast, but there's been so much, and that continues to try and dampen us in so many ways. But we are going to make the shift. It's going to happen, um, however much is thrown at us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is happening. I mean, if you think back to, I mean, I'm thinking about when I left school in 1996 to now, like how we're living this world, how things are evolving and changing. I mean, I can access things like a website which tells me all the where all the local springs are, so I can go and fill my water up off grid and have natural spring water. If you just chat to people in the street, they're all talking about water filters, or maybe not everywhere in the UK, but where I live,
Where you
um,
live, definitely.
where I live, and you can actually access organic food and biodynamic food, and there is actually so much more that's available to us than was in
Mm.
like 25 years ago. So I think we really are seeing the effect of birthing the earth. We're just and this new kind of quality to it, but I guess a lot of us want to see it come online much, much more.
Yeah, definitely. Well, shall we talk a little bit about what we were kind of deciding on the topic for this podcast, which is the gateway to New Earth, and what we see as different ways to connect with that gateway or to move through that gateway?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think I think the first thing to really get into our heads is that we are in a transition. So that kind of means that I'm always told like the way is clear, the way is open, like there is more love on the earth than there ever has been. And so, and collectively we're all birthing this together. And so it's really the individual work that we're doing within ourselves that's helping us align with that gateway, helping us to move
Mm,
towards it and get closer to that reality. And it's an inside job as well as an outside job, if that makes sense.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel like yeah, you put that really clearly actually, that the gateway is open. It's just us aligning with that frequency now. Um, and what I've always been kind of guided to do is to connect more with the organic world, with what is real and what is organic, which is the environment, with nature. And the more that we can do that, the more that we can connect with the frequencies of New Earth. So if we see the frequencies of New Earth as unconditional love and of unity consciousness, the easiest place to anchor into those is through nature for me, because the unconditional love is there all around us all the time. It's just we often don't tap into it. We're looking for it in people, we're looking for it in relationships, where it's actually our relationship with the earth, with the sun, with the sky, with the plants, which is where we really get that infinite supply of unconditional love. And also it's the frequency of unity consciousness when we anchor into nature. So that's definitely like a huge kind of gateway tool that I would use, and to connect with nature in every way that you can. So understanding it, feeling it, psychically connecting with it, understanding it as a consciousness, as a sentient awareness all around us, feels sort of like the most supportive way that I can really shift my energy sometimes.
Yeah, this is great because you're absolutely right that it's how can we put this? That the natural world is it holds the essence of creation. It holds this, maybe we could say creation codes, like it's a living, you know, like they're living beings
Yeah,
that really resonate with something that is innate within us as well. So I think it kind of nourishes us, this quality of being in this living world. And it's in contrast to what we're seeing more and more of, which is trying to take us into a synthetic world. And, you know, as much as I love my computer, we're using it now to do this podcast. Um, we are actually in a time where we're seeing more and more of this synthetic creation, like trying to make and create this synthetic world for us to live in and almost like disconnect us from nature.
yeah, that feels like it's definitely an agenda that's trying to play out. And like you said, there's many positives about some of the technology that we use. It's just there is a push to get us more disconnected from what's real and more connected into sort of, I don't know whether it's just tools or ways to control us, ways to kind of bring in programming. But I think people are getting stronger and stronger, and as we said, like more sovereign. And so these ways of controlling us aren't really working like they used to. I think things have changed even in the last 5 years massively, um, where I think it's quite hard to control us in the way that we used to be. Um, Even if a lot of this sort of synthetic world tools and materials are kind of being pushed at us, people are rejecting it more, I think.
Yeah, and I hope so because we've got like I really think that the new earth is taking us to unity consciousness, taking us to heart-centered, like a higher vibration where we're connecting more with love and with nature and that kind of etheric quality. But then we've got this stark contrast, which I guess is what some people are calling the transhumanism agenda, which is trying to take us more into, tech, screens, synthetic, like leading us into something that isn't. And I really, I think we are at a kind of pivotal time here because some people are deciding which way they're going to go. And I think that is a bit like the new earth, like who is going to move into unity consciousness and who is going to move into stay in the world of separation, which is a world that we've all been living, like we were born into that world that's trying to separate us all the time from this living quality of nature. So Bethan, on that topic, when you talked about your work with the elements, do you have any like gifts or offerings or any wisdom that some of the elements would tell us to help us reconnect with our humanity into this more unity for the new earth?
Yeah, well, we could tune in a little bit and I'll see what comes through. Um, before I do, though, what I would first say is connecting in with the consciousness of the elements is like a huge way to really shift into those higher energies of unconditional love and unity consciousness. Because as you start to understand that the elements themselves have consciousness, so fire has consciousness, air has consciousness, earth, water, um, each of the ways that the elements are expressed in the physical world has consciousness. um, Rain, snow, sunlight. This is all intelligence all around us. And as we move into that awareness, even just understanding that that might be possible, that that might be true, shifts our energy. Straight away, we're shifting into an openness, a higher frequency, a higher awareness. Just even thinking about these topics and opening ourselves up to sort of these maybe beliefs that some people listening to this might not have really thought about. Um, and I also think as you start realizing that nature is conscious and you can communicate with it, even though like the wind or the rain doesn't have ears or a mouth, doesn't mean it doesn't listen to you, doesn't mean it doesn't speak to you. It's just you have to understand how to communicate telepathically. But these are beings and higher consciousness that we can. And as soon as we understand that, we come into a gratitude. We start being more grateful for everything that's around us. We start to feel more supported. There can be days where there's been a lot of I think some frequencies going on that have been really making people feel lonely recently. And I think it's kind of a collective impact that's being caused, so that we feel even more separate or we feel hopeless or we're not on our mission. And the more you connect in with nature, it's a huge support to understand this is sentient beings around us. And it's definitely a support that I go to if I'm hit with those frequencies of feeling alone or separate, or everything feels too much or overwhelmed. But I will just tune in and see if there is any specific guidance from the elements or from the elementals. So I actually got sort of quite specific information, that right now, the most supportive way we can connect to support us in moving into new earth, into anchoring into these high frequencies that sometimes can feel hard. It can feel hard to feel unconditional love and unity consciousness when we're constantly being kind of pummeled with energies that are trying to make us separate and trying to make us feel negative. Um, the best energy to start really connecting in with is earth, because that's the mother energy, like the divine mother energy. And connecting in with mother earth is going to give us the support that we need right now. We're being really kind of we're really going through a lot of emotional turmoil as we're really shifting out of old patterns, and that's triggering a lot of people into inner child energies that feel very vulnerable and can feel like they're really feeling the wounds that are coming up that are being purged out. So connecting with the earth is really a priority, and that's that mother energy that we can connect with that will support our whole body. And it also, the more we can connect with Mother Earth, the more we feel, even if we don't really feel it consciously, but what is actually happening, the more that you do, and if you've got intention, is that you will be bringing unconditional love into your body and into your aura, and then you stop needing it from outside of yourself, from people that can't give it to you, whether that's family, whether that's partners. We're always looking for that unconditional love because it's actually the earth that gives it to us, and we've become disconnected from the earth. So what I was actually seeing is almost visualizing energy. It almost looks like grass or plants coming up from the earth and kind of moving into our bodies, like through our feet and coming up into our body, and just having that as a visualization when you're out in nature, when you're walking around. And I actually saw this in a vision quite some time ago. It's probably about 10 years ago, when I was sort of sensing, looking into the future and looking at like how we might be living. And it was almost like with each step somebody took, they became earth. Like that foot would become the earth that it was standing on. Then the next foot would step, and that would connect with that part of the earth. And it was like there was no separation between the barrier of the human body and the earth. It's like they would merge. And I think that's quite symbolic of what we're going to be moving into, is our awareness. We're going to be in such a level of unity consciousness that we will be aware of the earth as just as much as she's aware of herself and aware of us. We're going to move into like a joint awareness almost. So as a starting point, just to use visualization, use imagination, and imagine these earth energies. If you want to imagine them as plants, I was seeing it as grass actually, coming up into our body with each step that we take.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And it makes me think of I'm always been told we're building the etheric heart, and that is leading us to unity consciousness because we will all be connected through that, through the etheric, which is kind of what you're describing when you're saying feeling connected to the earth in this way. And
Yeah,
yeah, I feel like that is what we're all moving towards. We're sort of creating that instrument where we can all feel and sense and know like what's the connection to the whole, really. Well,
yeah,
because a lot of us have been separated from that experience.
yeah, definitely. And would you like to share about the very exciting workshop that I know you're running at the moment, and you're going to be running regularly on birthing new Earth? Because I know you've got some really exciting things coming up with that.
Oh, yeah, I would love to. So I'm going to be running a workshop online this week on Zoom and with I've got a wonderful group signed up already, but there are a few more spaces. And we're going to be looking at people's personal alignment with birthing the new earth and how they can bring in their soul mission or their soul purpose of why they incarnated this time. We're going to be looking at the Akashic record and working with the angelic council to bring in your spiritual team and connect you so you have more clarity about your alignment with what you came to do this time in your incarnation. And it's interesting because when you were tuning in with your lovely message, I also had a message from the angel council that they are also helping us. It's almost like on an individual level, on a personal level, they're giving each of us like the right encouragement, the right direction, like almost like they're showing me a compass point they're helping us to move towards, and they're doing it on a really individual basis. So there is no need to be afraid. There is no need to be, there's a lot of fear I think people have about what's all the changes going on, the transformations. We're all being guided for this to happen in a really safe and peaceful way, in a way that is divine timing as well.
Oh, that's a beautiful message. I wanted just to talk about a couple of things we've been talking about your workshop because it sounds amazing. And there's a couple of like really profound things that you said that I just want to kind of start talking about so we can share with everybody. And you were saying that us kind of stepping into our highest soul purpose, so it might be that people are in their soul purpose now, but it's probably going to be kind of upgraded, it's going to be expanded, is actually how the new earth is going to be birthed. It's through us embodying those higher purposes.
Yeah, and that's so right that we are actually bringing it through us. We are like the channels, how it's going to happen in the physical by our vibration. Like what we're having access to in our own energy field is allowing us to create it in the physical world. And what I'm also being shown is we're going to have access to much higher frequencies and a much more tangible quality of our own abilities. And it's, I'm always being shown it's quite magical. Like the manifestation is going to be very quick. There's not going to be all this kind of lagging quality where people have a dream and they can't seem to make it happen, and it takes like 60 years to happen, if it happens at all. Like things are going to be much, much quicker than that because we'll be vibrating higher and have access to this more creative energy that is actually ours. It's our birthright. It's already within us. It's just been waiting to activate and get online.
That's wonderful. And that feels really encouraging as well. And there was something else you said. This is just something I love. I don't know whether there's more to say about it, but you were saying that as you step into your highest soul purpose, it's like you're falling in love more with your life because
Yeah.
doing your soul purpose is your authentic self. It is you.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's so good, Bethan, because one of the things I've noticed is that so few people really love their lives. I mean, I'm noticing that with people, so few people love their partners or love their lives or, love their jobs, love their work. And really, this new paradigm is based on love, like really learning what you love, falling in love with what you're doing, even if it's arduous, even if it's like washing up or but the whole point is like trying to have much more of that relationship of love frequency in everything you do. And that does create that transformation of birthing out of yourself the kind of work that you want to do, the lifestyle you want to live, the communities you want to share in, and it's all part of this beautiful picture of actually just falling in love with your life.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's um, a beautiful shift that I hope we can all sort of move into soon and as expansively as possible. Um,
Yeah.
it would be quite welcome, I think.
I think it's well overdue, actually.
Yeah. Um, so, on the last note, should we just share any last insights or any last words of guidance around how people can kind of navigate this time? Because, like we said, it is quite intense. Or how they can connect more with the new Earth frequencies, so they kind of feel more guidance or feel more supported.
Yeah, well, I guess if I was looking to kind of sum up what's going on, I mean, the new Earth is birthing. I mean, it's already here in many ways, but we're just going to see it more and more in tangible reality. And it's something we're creating together. So this is a co-creation, like with other like-minded, heart-centered beings, especially star seeds and light workers, people who are birthing, who've incarnated now to birth this Earth. And it's also a co-creation with our divinity and our spiritual teams that work with us. And I think it's taking us back to this idea that every action we take, every intention we set, every act of kindness and attuning to love, every moment that we're trying to embody this truth within us, that this is actually transforming the collective and it's transforming us on a very deep individual level for our purpose, but it's also transforming everything around us.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And I agree. It's each time you're going through a big emotion and you allow it to go through your body and you feel it, you're potentially probably clearing, healing something for a whole collective, for a global pattern. You know, people are doing massive work on a day-to-day basis without even realizing it. And each of those people, some people might not be remotely spiritual, might not be on this path, but if they're living with integrity as a sovereign being, you know, not listening to what they should do, but listening to what is right and what is true,
Mm.
they're shifting the earth as well. And it's really beautiful that there are so many sovereign beings now who stand in truth, um, and are not afraid to do so. Um, so, yeah, so I think working collectively is really where we want to be headed, and working together on this.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And the other thing I wanted to mention was this journey, this birthing is not really about like a rigid perfectionism because sometimes when I go into like visions of the new earth, like everything looks pristine and perfect. Like that almost seems like it's not real. And there's always going to be a process where things are happening at different rates and we're transforming this and transforming that. But actually, if we just let go of this idea that things are going to be perfect, and think about more like, oh, I'm just going to stay aligned, a lot like you're saying, just to the truth. I'm going to stay aligned. I'm going to try and be present. I'm going to trust that I have the ability to birth out of myself just exactly what's right for me at the right moment. Then it's just really knowing that that activation principle is just waiting for an opportunity to show itself. And it's a real, actually, we may not feel it at times, but actually it's a real blessing and an honor to be on earth at this time, allowing this new impulse and potency to come out of us.
Yeah, yeah, very beautifully said. Thank you, Astara. And if anybody listening is interested in the workshop that Astara has coming up, you know, get in touch. There's spaces on the one this week, isn't there? And then you'll be
Yeah.
running it again. Yeah.
Yeah. And your work too, Beth. It's been a real pleasure hearing about the wonderful work you do with the elements and, offering people another road into this incredible transformational experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to, I do have like a series of journeys, which I was working with people on that need to be released again. So I will be doing that soon as well.
So, thank you so much for everyone who's tuned into today's episode of Accelerating Timelines. I am really, really grateful, and I'm sure you are too, Bethan, for everyone who is taking the time to listen, because I think that together we are continuing to build these new timelines and help bring the new Earth into being. And it would be just really great that if anyone feels so called, that if they comment in the section in where they see the podcast, or they can message us and just let us know like how their spiritual mission is unfolding, and that we can all connect together as a collective for this ascension process.
Yeah, that would be really wonderful. And yeah, thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, Astara.
Thank you, and sending you all love and light and deep gratitude. And this is the end of our podcast this week, but we'll be back next week for some more insights and connecting with our higher purpose.